Yudo is a straight-up Tanjiro ripoff that gets to clap all the demon girls who want a piece of him. After losing all the memories of his demon slayer past, he stays hidden using the magic charm from his grandmother. However, when the charm mysteriously stops working, he begins to attract all the demons who want to isekai him. One morning, Rinko goes to pick him up for school but finds him sleeping, so she gets into a sus position with him to wake him. The cultured creep takes advantage of this, annoying her, so she gets off him and sends a cat to jump on him, immediately irritating him. As they later head to school, Yudo sneezes uncontrollably and calls her a psychopath for dropping a cat on him when she knows he's got an allergy. He then asks her why she came to pick him up for school since she always leaves him alone, and she tells him she doesn't want him to be late on his special day, surprising him. He wonders what that means, and she immediately wishes him a happy birthday. But the idiot is a sadist and isn't excited. He only remembers that it's on this day he got separated from his parents 7 years ago. She feels sorry for reminding him of this, but he tells her not to worry about it since he has her and the charm his grandmother gave him. As they look at the charm, a pretty bitch suddenly calls Yudo from atop a building, shocking them. She appears beside him in a blink and goes naughty on him, but Rinko quickly grabs him and runs off with him before he climaxes. Later, during class, Yudo thinks about the little moment of pleasure he had earlier, and upon seeing him, Rinko gets jealous and mad as she believes he is thinking about the girl earlier. So after the class, she goes to drag him away to the rooftop while he is talking with Teizo, and Ayakashi suddenly possesses Teizo. Later, while Rinko accuses Yudo of being a culture loser, Teizo appears like a starving zombie. They think he is just being a comedian until he fires a magic ball at them, which they manage to dodge, wondering what the heck. Teizo suddenly grows out insect legs and attempts to attack again, but the strange girl from earlier appears out of nowhere and counterattacks. She then charges at him and lands a strike, crashing him to the ground. The demon insect comes out of him immediately, and she lunges toward it again with her katana, isekaiing it. Later that night, Yudo can't stop thinking about the fine girl he saw in the afternoon. As he wonders what happened earlier, a strange cat enters through his window and goes underneath his bedspread, suddenly turning into the same girl from the afternoon. She starts to develop plot with him, and while the weak dude tries to resist her, she unbuttons his top. She then sees the charm pendant his grandma gave him to protect him from Ayakashi. She tells him that the effectiveness of the charm has waned, and from now on, he will attract Ayakashi as this is his destiny. However, she calls him her master and assures him she will always be beside him to protect him, leaving him wondering who she is and why she is referring to him as master. She introduces herself as Himari, a cat demon, and as soon as he hears that, his allergies resurface. Rinko enters at that moment and is surprised to find a girl atop him, making her mad. The next day at school, Himari is introduced as a new student, and she requests to sit beside Yudo in class, making Rinko even more jealous. Later, Himari explains to Yudo that his family, the Amakawa family, is one of 12 demon slayer houses charged with protecting the world of humans from the Ayakashi of old. She also reveals that the statesmen of the past showed no mercy to the Ayakashi, which resulted in the surviving Ayakashi despising demon slayers. However, one master of the Amakawa family betrayed those in power and refused to off a cat Ayakashi, and ever since then, the family of the cat Ayakashi vowed to serve the Amakawa family. This is why Himari has also chosen to serve Yudo. She hugs him, and he immediately starts to sneeze again, causing Rinko to pull him away. She tells Himari to back off because she is the one who has been looking after Yudo since his parents passed away. However, Himari asks her if her weak, skinny ass can protect him from the Ayakashi, making her speechless in shame, knowing that there's nothing she can do. Following this, Rinko challenges Himari to a competition, saying that if she defeats Himari in a series of sports contests, she must stop following Yudo. They soon begin the contests, and Himari easily whips her ass out across the high jump, fencing, judo, and tennis contests, making her ashamed. Himari then approaches Rinko in her feeling of shame and rubs her weakness on her face, and as she leaves, Rinko calls her a monster in anger, but immediately regrets it. Later, Yudo meets Himari on the rooftop to apologize on Rinko's behalf, but Himari tells him she doesn't give a shit about that and says she is instead concerned with how he feels about a cat Ayakashi following him around. He tells her he knows she is genuine in her concerns for him, so he will not turn her down. Hearing this, she jumps at him, and as they fall to the ground, Yudo feels like he has experienced this before, but he cannot remember. The next day, Rinko feels terrible for what she did yesterday and thinks of apologizing to Yudo, but as she enters his room, she finds the idiot having a nice time and she becomes pissed. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, while some Ayakashi meet concerning Yudo and his cat, Shizuku, a water Ayakashi suddenly appears with a great hatred for demon slayers and the desire to make sure none is alive. Later at school that day, the class organizes a beach party to welcome the new student who just joined them. Afterward, Himari tells Yudo as they head home that he has to accompany her to buy a swimsuit for the beach party, and while he is reluctant, she insists and goes ahead of him in excitement. Yudo thinks of calling Rinko, but it suddenly starts to rain, so he runs under a bridge. Then, he suddenly hears a strange voice telling him to forget everything, or he will die otherwise. Afterward, Himari, dressed in her kimono and carrying a katana, walks to the swimsuit store with Yudo and Rinko, and as they head there, Rinko asks her why she always has to take a sword with her. She replies that she has to because she is Yudo's bodyguard and must protect him from Ayakashi, who might want to attack him at all times, just like the one he witnessed earlier. At the store, Himari finds it difficult to get her size, and Rinko decides to use this opportunity to play with her bazookas since she's only got walnut-sized balloons. As she vigorously plays with them, Himari almost climaxes, but Yudo interrupts them, feeling irritated by the scene, which should only be found on an OnlyFans page. Later, Himari tests some of the swimsuits, and Yudo can't help but be carried away with how sus she looks. Meanwhile, Shizuku is spying on them, but the sales rep is surprised to see the strangely wet grounds around the store, not knowing Shizuku has been dripping because she is all wet. The next day, during the beach party, Teizo tries to make Yudo stare at those melons dangling around before their faces, but the idiot is completely clueless about what Teizo is talking about, annoying him. He states how much he is feeling sus and is about to wet his pants, and on hearing this, Rinko punishes him even though she doesn't make the list of those with huge balloons. Following this, Rinko and Yudo go to call Himari, who is just sitting by the seashore to swim, but she is scared of water and doesn't like to get wet. So Rinko gives her her floater to use and then drags Yudo away so that she can get wet with him. As they later play with balls, Yudo looks around to see Himari but doesn't see, making him wonder where she is, so he immediately searches for her. Meanwhile, Himari has already drifted away toward the middle of the sea on her floater, as she is still scared of water. Yudo suddenly emerges from the water, and while he tries talking with her, a wall of water suddenly rises before them and falls right on them, submerging them in the water. Himari quickly hugs him due to her fear for water, using that opportunity to give him a feel of her plot. However, a strange creature suddenly appears and attacks them with its legs, tying them and drowning them in the water. Later, Yudo regains consciousness and is surprised to see the girl from the previous day atop him. Shizuku tells him that she has come to unalive him because the awakening of demon slayers will disturb the balance between Ayakashi and humans, just like 200 years ago, when one of the 12 demon slayer families destroyed her entire bloodline when they were only living peacefully. She deems him as evil and immediately attempts to isekai him. But Himari suddenly appears and saves him in a quick moment of physical combat. She tells Shizuku she won't let her lay a finger on her master, and Shizuku calls her a traitor because she is still siding with the Amikawa family. The horrible creature from earlier suddenly emerges out of the water again, and Himari quickly charges at Shizuku to attack her. But before she can get to her, she changes into water form and disappears, shocking Himari. The horrible monster grabs her and ties her in a sus position as though it were preparing her for 50 Shades of Brown. Shizuku then controls a body of water around her, which starts to spin and almost drowns her. Yudo quickly jumps, trying to save her, but joins in the spinning too. The two hold each other, and Himari suddenly grabs an ice weapon and stabs herself, immediately countering the effect of the water since Shizuku cannot control the water mixed with the blood of another Ayakashi. Shizuku is surprised Himari could do this, and she summons a larger body of water, preparing to attack them again. So Himari tells Yudo to escape while she holds her off since she is his bodyguard. However, Yudo tells her to cut the bodyguard bullshit as he is not going to let her sacrifice herself for him, surprising her. Shizuku is surprised and wonders what kind of relationship is between them. She stops her attack immediately and withdraws, telling them she will come back to isekai them. Upon returning to her colleagues, they are surprised she didn't go on with the mission, even though she had the chance to isekai the two. But Shizuku tells them she wants to confirm something before she proceeds. Meanwhile, in a cafe across town, an unknown maid serves cappuccinos to her customers. Yudo continues thinking about Shizuku as he takes his bath, and suddenly, she appears out of the water before him, scaring him. He screams immediately, announcing to the others that Shizuku is around. Himari comes running immediately and slashes her with her sword, but Shizuku turns into water and suddenly appears behind Yudo, threatening to isekai him. However, he tells her he already said he doesn't plan on fighting Ayakashi, and she tells him to prove it since demon slayers were known to have eliminated her family in the past. He tells her he is an unambitious loser who only wants to keep living with Rinko and Himari. He passes out as he says this and wakes up after a while. He immediately jumps to his feet. The cultured girls immediately confess that they didn't see his rod or anything like that, but Shizuku reveals that they all saw it and that it is small, embarrassing him. Himari attempts to attack Shizuku again to teach her a lesson, but Yudo tells her to stop, frustrating Shizuku, who is already tired of their useless back and forth. Yudo repeats that he never wanted to fight, but Himari tells her to cut that crap and stop being a moron. She then says she is just worried about him, and he replies that she should stand down if she is really worried. He immediately starts to sneeze again, prompting Shizuku to ask why the idiot is always sneezing and crying at the same time. Reiko explains that he is allergic to cats, surprising Shizuku, who wonders why he still keeps the cat girl around even though she triggers his allergic reactions. Yudo then gives a speech that breaks the internet, explaining that he only wants to live a normal life with his friends and will not come after Ayakashi, just because he is a demon slayer, surprising her. Shizuku still can't seem to understand what kind of demon slayer who doesn't slay Ayakashi he is, but replies that she will understand him with time. She then requests to start living with him so she can get to understand him better. Following this, Shizuku starts showing herself as wifey material, making Rinko and Himari uneasy because they are useless. What girls who don't think girls should do house chores? Shizuku decides to taunt Himari, asking her how she wants to be useful to a man who desires a peaceful life when all she knows to do is fight. Himari heads out pissed, and on her way, she meets their homeroom teacher, and they head to the cafe together. At the cafe, the homeroom teacher introduces her to the maid in charge of the cafe, named Liz, and tells her to take Himari as an employee so she can learn to be a traditional wife. As they both greet each other, Himari immediately perceives that Liz has a characteristic inhuman smell, but Liz tells her it could be the tea and says the same about her. Later, Yudo, Rinko, and Shizuku arrive at the cafe and are surprised to see her up and doing. Liz soon appears to caution Himari as she acts naughty around Yudo while on duty, and upon seeing Yudo, she finds his smell very strange. Later, while they enjoy their tea, Himari comes to warn Yudo about Liz, suspecting that she might be an Ayakashi from the West. However, Yudo states she doesn't look like one and starts to observe her as she carries out her duties. Yudo finds her amusing as he thinks that she must really love her job. Meanwhile, Liz takes it the other way as she becomes terrified by his stares, thinking he may be a ghostbuster who has sent Himari to spy on her. She immediately gets her magic-imbued ingredient, which she plans to use to force him to retreat. She later serves him another cup of tea, surprising him because he didn't order another, but she tells him it's on the house. As Yudo tries to take it, Shizuku quickly tastes it with her long tongue and informs him that the tea is tainted with magic, surprising him. Teizo, the clueless idiot, grabs the tea and drinks, and suddenly he feels the need to head home. Shizuku immediately informs Himari that the maid is up to something, and Himari immediately launches an attack. Liz pleads and states she is against violence, but Himari doesn't listen, accusing her of making the first move. She attacks again, and Liz counterattacks with her tea magic spray, which causes all the customers to leave immediately. Himari continues attacking even though Yudo tries to stop her, and Liz defends herself with her tea magic. Her tea spray soon gets exhausted, and while Himari attempts to attack again, she manages to overpower her, knocking her to the ground. But Himari deals a fatal blow, as she suddenly pierces her katana right in between her huge melons. However, she is shocked when Liz isn't affected and wonders what is going on. Shizuku immediately realizes she is not a tea Ayakashi, and they discover that she must be of Tsukumogami, an artifact spirit she originates from items that have reached 100 years. Shizuki then says that this is not her real form and that the object must be elsewhere. Himari immediately notices a cup on a shelf and quickly grabs it, intending to break it. Liz quickly tries to stop her, but she trips and falls, hitting the cup off Himari's hand. She becomes terrified that her body is about to break, but is surprised when she sees that Yudo has saved the day. Liz asks him why he saved her, and he replies that he never sensed any evil from her, so he knew she loved her job and the people she served, surprising her. Hearing this, Shizuku is dumbfounded as she can't believe that there is a demon slayer who wouldn't fight Ayakashi. Following this, Yudo wakes up from a dream of seeing himself alone in a forest holding a cat. He suddenly sees his hand having its own mind, playing with Himari's plot. As he tries to remove his hand silently, Himari catches him and asks if he loves to eat melons. Shizuku appears from underneath the bed cover, asking if this is how he sleeps with the cat girl every night. Rinko enters the room and sees them in a compromising position, making her very angry with the demon slayer who, instead of slaying demons, claps them. Later that night, Himari sits on the rooftop, thinking about how the charm that Yudo's grandma gave to protect him, but it instead wiped his childhood memories such that he can't even remember that he is a demon slayer and now has demon girls fighting over him. She reasons that his ignorance is a huge problem and thinks of what to do. She immediately goes to meet the idiot while he does the only thing he knows to do and tells him to pack his bags. The next day, upon reaching Yudo's hometown, Himari is pissed with herself for letting Rinko and Shizuku come along, but Rinko replies that she was never going to allow her and Yudo to come alone to such a sus place. Shizuku says that she had to come because she is interested in Yudo's roots, as she may get to learn something about demon slayers. Meanwhile, the ignorant idiot asks Himari why exactly they have come here, and she replies that she thought he would remember his past with her and also recognize himself as a demon slayer if they came to his hometown. Some minutes later, they reach his grandparents' home, and a girl named Kaya comes to welcome them. But she isn't pleased to see Yudo and even hopes that he dies because he is the reason Himari is not staying with her. Meanwhile, some degenerates are lurking in the forest, spying on them and planning to isekai him. Upon entering the house, Himari takes Yudo to his grandparents' memorial table, and he feels terrible that he was disconnected from them and couldn't even go to their funeral. Himari restates her vow to protect Yudo until he becomes a full-fledged demon slayer. Upon hearing this, Yudo suddenly remembers a fraction of his past when he departed from his grandparents, and a cat stood on the roof. Later, while he thinks of what his past was like, Himari appears and starts to act sus toward him to force him to remember his past. As she begins the process of plot development, he suddenly remembers being fond of a cat in the past and also sees himself kissing a girl. Himari transforms into a cat and talks with him, and he realizes that she is the cat he used to be fond of. She immediately transforms into her human form and hugs him with her full plot uncensored, and he wonders whether to grab those cakes or pass. One of the Ayakashi, who has been spying on them, suddenly appears and introduces herself as Aegea. She threatens to isekai Yudo, but Himari won't let that happen. Aegea instantly charges at them, thinking they are both defenseless since Himari is in her creation state. But Himari puts on her clothes instantly and blocks her attack, surprising her. Himari tells Yudo that Aegea is a dangerous air demon who sucks the blood of her prey while still alive. She then says she will unalive her, but Yudo cautions her. So she tells Aegea to forsake violence and withdraw because Yudo is advocating peace between Ayakashi and humans. However, Aegea replies with sarcastic laughter and says she doesn't give a shit about what he believes in. She is only after isekaiing him so she can increase her status among Ayakashi, annoying Himari, who immediately takes this as a fair reason to attack her. They start fighting immediately, and after a few exchanges, a huge robotic monster appears, shocking everyone. Aegea orders the gigantic robot to eliminate the two idiots before her, and Himari immediately lunges toward it to attack it, but the robot hits her off in one freaking hit. Rinko and the others hear the noise and come out to see what's happening, and they are shocked to see the huge creature standing a few kilometers away. A demon girl suddenly appears before them and starts to attack them with logs. Meanwhile, Himari continues to fight with Aegea and the robot, and she tells Yudo to get his ugly ass moving. So he starts to run away since he is a loser who can't fight for himself, and as he runs, he wonders what he needs to do to stop all these fighting. He stops, turns around, and starts running towards the fighting scene. At the same time, Aegea and Himari continue exchanging strikes, and suddenly Himari falls to the ground. Giving Aegea the opening for a strike, Yudo intercepts with his body, receiving the damage. Himari is surprised and asks him if he is stupid or something, and he replies that he is just trying to be a man. He suddenly falls from the strike with red juice spilling out, shocking Himari. She immediately loses her mind and goes berserk, acting like a demonized human, unleashing attacks that get too overwhelming for Aegea. Aegea quickly orders the robot to attack, but Himari destroys the goddamn Ayakashi robot in one try, shocking Aegea, who wonders what the heck. Himari almost destroys Aegea, but Yudo suddenly grabs a rod and blocks her attack, unleashing a massive light that engulfs them. Shizuku approaches the scene and finds Yudo and Himari lying unconscious on the ground. She mounts Yudo's dragon while he is still unconscious and begins to ride him till he climaxes. Himari regains consciousness and gets angry upon seeing her in this sus position, but Shizuku tells her to keep quiet, saying she is only treating Yudo's wounds with her water's healing abilities. She soon finishes, and Himari realizes that her master is now completely healed. Himari becomes relieved, but she is vexed at the fact that Shizuku took advantage of him. However, Shizuku flips the blame on her by saying she can't believe that this happened to Yudo, even though she was with him, making her feel terrible. Later, Yudo asks Shizuku about Aegea, wondering why she was only interested in ice-kaying him and not listening to him. Shizuku explains that there are various types of Ayakashi, and says she is more of an understanding type. She then tells him she will teach him some things since he has learned a bit of what it means to be a demon slayer. Following this, she explains that each of the 12 demon slayer families has special powers, and the one that belongs to the Amakawa is a magic imbuement called the Light Fairy. Yuno is surprised, and Shizuku further explains that the effect of this magic is huge, such that even if he uses it on a stick lying around, it can give it the strength of a legendary holy sword, reminding Yudo of what happened earlier. Yudo then asks what the book says about Himari, and Shizuku reluctantly explains that the cat's ancestors were the type that ice-kayed humans and devour their victims, shocking Yudo. Shizuku says that Himari's true nature is getting pleasure from hunting and losing herself in bloodshed, and if she continues fighting, the possibility of her heart becoming tainted is high. Yudo asks if there are any records of this, and Shizuku replies that there's a record of the family head ice-kaying one of the Ayakashi who lost itself, shocking him. Meanwhile, as Himari bathes, she thinks about what happened to her when Yudo got hurt. Yudo meets her while she does this, and as they later discuss, she blames herself for putting him in danger. She then says vow again, promising to protect him until he fully awakens as a demon slayer. However, he tells her that even though he is happy to hear this, that is not what he wants. He tells her he just wants her to be the usual Himari and that she won't become like that. Moreover, Himari tells him she might be the first Ayakashi he ice-kays as a demon slayer, surprising him, but she quickly deflects it as a joke. Later on their way back home, Yudo tells Himari about a part of his past which he remembers when she kissed him by a lake. But Himari tells him that the first time she showed him human form was when she appeared to him and Rinko on their way to school, shocking him and leaving him wondering who the heck now put her salve in his mouth. Following this, Shizuku starts to train Yudo so he can learn to awaken the Amakawa power lying dormant inside him. But it seems pointless because the power isn't showing any green light. Shizuku tells him that all her attacks won't work until he is in a life or death situation, surprising him. She then tells him she isn't satisfied with the fact that he only wants to awaken the power now because he doesn't wish Himari to become a monster. She later explains that a strong mind is essential in activating the Light Fairy, rather than a strong body. This means that he has to keep a clear mind in any situation. Upon hearing this, Liz flings him upwards and grabs him midair to train him to keep a clear mind in a dangerous situation. She sticks his head in her melons, and seeing this, the other naughty girls join in the training. They all grab him and start acting sus, while the idiot pretends not to want it. Himari soon appears in anger, wondering if this was the useless training they claimed they were coming for. But she also jumps at Yudo and buries his head in her soft pillows to help him keep a clear mind. Several days later, while Yudo and Himari head home from school, they engage in a boring conversation which is not necessary for this story. And while they discuss, a girl carrying a huge shipment of plot appears out of nowhere, and on seeing her, Himari immediately launches an attack, but she swiftly dodges it. Himari realizes she is not an Ayakashi and asks her who she is, and the girl introduces herself as Kwezu, a demon slayer of the 12 families. Yudo is surprised to know that there is another demon slayer besides him, and she tells him that the fate of isekai Ayakashi lies with both of them. She then offers that he joins her in fighting the Ayakashi, and says he doesn't need a useless cat to watch his back anymore. As she approaches him, Yudo tells her he doesn't understand what she is talking about, and she tells him not to disappoint her as they have not met in a while, leaving him wondering what she means by that. Himari charges at her again, but she evades her attack and moves closer to Yudo. Himari gets pissed and attempts to attack her again, but Koesu instantly creates a barrier around Yudo and herself, shutting Himari out. Koesu then grabs Yudo by the neck and reveals that she is his fiancée as arranged by his grandfather, shocking him. However, he doesn't still remember anything about her, so she kisses him to make him remember clearly. He instantly remembers a girl with a crescent on her forehead kissing him by the lake, and he is disappointed that it didn't turn out as he was expecting. Himari manages to break through the barrier, separating them, but Koesu grabs him and kisses him again. As she prepares to take her leave, she tells him that if the Amakala family doesn't cut ties with Ayakashi soon, some demon slayer might just come and unalive him along with the Ayakashi. Following this, Shizuku meets with the other Ayakashi, who initially asked her to isekai Yudo, and they express how terrified they are by the new appearance of Koesu, and not the fact that Yudo is already awakening as a demon slayer. They ask Shizuku if she is sure they don't have to eliminate Yudo before he comes after them, and she assures them that Yudo is such a darling who wouldn't point his sword against the Ayakashi. However, she states that Koesu is the problem they have to deal with. Shizuku attacks with her water magic, while Koesu counterattacks with fire magic. Koesu suddenly activates a spell that unleashes a massive inferno on Shizuku, but she escapes it by disappearing and appearing on a large water tank. Shizuku then causes the water to break out of the tank, forming dragon heads, which she then uses to unleash several attacks on Koesu. But Koesu matches up her strength. They both charge at each other at full strength, but Shizuku crashes against a nearby tank after getting hit. However, Shizuku starts to troll Koesu by saying she shouldn't even be considered a demon slayer with this low level of power. After all, she is the weakest of the 12 families, the residual of all demon slayers. Upon hearing this, Koesu gets very angry and starts throwing more fire attacks at her, but Shizuku manages to resist them before eventually escaping. Later the same night, as Koesu watches the news with Kaburaji, a dude from the Public Safety Division, about the incident that just happened, he assures her that they will continue to support her as long as she remains a demon slayer, making her remember what Shizuku said to her. She thinks about the humiliation her family has had to face from other demon slayer families and her determination to make those who mock them bow down to her family. Himari wakes up in the middle of the night feeling restless, as she can't seem to get the thought of kissing her master off her mind. She immediately heads out and asks him to kiss her too, just like he did with Koesu. He feels reluctant, so she asks him to give her a peck on the cheek at least. He closes his eyes and prepares to peck her, only to mistakenly kiss her on her lips. Himari becomes excited immediately and starts to act silly while Yudo thinks about how messy his little life has become. Following this, Yudo, Shizuku, and Rinko meet at the cafe, and Shizuku tells them what she came up with in her research about Koesu. She explains that the Jinguji clan where Koesu is from are demon slayers who rose to power by dipping their hands in Western magic. Liz gets scared as she hears that there is a new demon slayer, and when Shizuku reveals that the demon slayer is pretty violent, Liz becomes terrified and uses the opportunity to give Yudo a feel of her plot, annoying the two other girls. Rinko asks Yudo what his relationship with Koesu is, and he reluctantly reveals that they are supposed to be fiancés, making Rinko and Liz annoyed. Liz brings out her magical tea and suggests that Yudo take it to erase all his memories from when he was born till now, but the other girls called her stupid for suggesting something so silly. Koesu suddenly enters the cafe, shocking them. She tells them there's no need for an introduction, since they were just talking about her. She then starts again with her union with Yudo's bullshit, but Yudo tells her he can't agree with this unless she changes her mentality. She then says that demon slayers are chosen existences and are tasked with eradicating Ayakashi. She adds that hanging out with Ayakashi like Himari and Shizuku is absurd, but Rinko immediately snaps at her, telling her she doesn't have the right to say any of the trash she is spitting. However, Koesu completely destroys her already low self-esteem by calling her a powerless human who needs to be protected by others, and then tells her to keep quiet if she has never experienced the life-or-death battles demon slayers are known to face. Koesu approaches him and says he should reconsider his grandfather's words. However, Himari appears and tells her she has to be the most selfish human on earth. She says she won't allow Yudo to become her puppet, but Koesu hugs him even more, saying they are both meant for each other. Hearing this, Himari chuckles and acts petty, as she refers to her 3 kisses with Yuto, saying Kosu was the one who initiated them, unlike her own, where it was Yuto who initiated it. Everyone is shocked that Yuto is already swapping spit with a cat. Kosu, feeling quite jealous, tells Himari that this doesn't mean anything compared to the promise she and Yuto made to each other. But Yuto doesn't even remember what that is. Kosu realizes that this might take more time than she thought, so she decides to leave and come back some other time. Later that night, Kosu, determined to get Yuto on her side so she can lay her hands on the anicapped power, summons some dark powers that would make anyone question if she is really a demon slayer or a witch. The next day, Yuto gets lost in thoughts while he plays soccer and gets hit by a ball, causing him to pass out. He later wakes up between Himari's thighs and soon gets talking with her, wondering how he can change Kosu's mentality about Ayakashi. But Himari says that there is nothing he can do as Kosu is already set in her way of thinking. He becomes frustrated and wonders why his grandfather even matched him up with such a psychopath. Later, as he returns to the field to continue playing, Himari tells him that she will be heading home first to put some countermeasures to Kosu in place. Later that evening, Himari meets Kosu, and they prepare to fight each other to settle the age-long feud between them finally. Kosu reveals how she is willing to break the rules to get whatever she wants, which is why she had to meddle in dark magic in the first place. However, Himari tells her that Yuto is a person with a wonderful and kind heart, and asks her if she can really handle someone like him with her evil and frigid heart. They suddenly charge at each other and start unleashing attacks, but the two manage to dodge each other's attacks without getting hurt. Himari charges at her again, and as she attempts to land an attack with her katana, Kosu brings out a gun, shocking her. She starts to shoot at Himari, and she starts to run around, trying to dodge her bullets. Kosu activates fire magic and throws it on the ground before her, expecting her fall in her trap and get burnt, but Himari manages to save herself by sacrificing her precious sword. Kosu shoots at her again and lands at it this time, weakening her immediately. She informs Himari that the bullets are imbued with her magic and will soon start to cause a reaction. Himari suddenly starts to experience her pre-berserk symptoms just as Kosu wants so she can justify iseiking her, and a few moments later, Himari starts acting mad with a strong desire to unalive Kosu. However, as she goes about her madness, she suddenly remembers Yuto's when he told her he wants her to continue being her usual self without being tainted but fighting, and she becomes calm. She immediately escapes, shocking Kosu, who suddenly realizes she has been trembling. Back at home, Yuto is surprised that Himari has yet to return, and he asks Rinko and Shizuku if they know her whereabouts. Shizuku then replies that Himari went to fight Kosu, shocking him because he never knew this was the countermeasure she was talking about. They suddenly hear a stomping noise from Himari's room and immediately head there, only to find her lying on the ground, completely exhausted. They start to take care of her, and Yuto blames himself for being so weak that he is always being protected. Himari has a dream where she tells Yuto not to touch her, because she is filthy after falling into Kosu's trap and being engulfed in her own darkness. She later wakes up and is surprised to see Yuto beside her. Yuto is excited to see her, but she blames herself for being so weak that she had to run away. Yuto, renowned for running away, tells her it's good to run sometimes, but she snaps back at him, telling him not to pamper her with his words as this hurts her even more than any blade. Yuto tells her to go back to sleep as she still has some of Kosu's magic in her body, but Himari tells her that she will have to wait for 2 days to eradicate it, and she tells him to bring a secret pill from her bag, which will help expel the magic from her body, but she will lose her sanity for a while and act violently. She soon takes the pill and goes full cat mode, acting silly all night long, and by the next day, she returns to normal while Yuto wakes up with scratches all over. He tells her not to do anything reckless alone anymore, to which she agrees, and after this, Yuto reasons that he has to do something about Kosu alone, so he heads over to her hotel. As he stands by the reception desk, Kaparaji bugs him so he can listen in on his conversations with Kosu. However, upon reaching her room, Kosu notices immediately and collects his phone to deactivate it. Following this, she asks him if he is ready to join her in becoming a demon slayer, but he declines, saying that he is not like her, who is just all about isekai and ayakashi. He adds that he wants to keep his normal lifestyle, and the ayakashi around him agree with that except her, who only desires to eliminate them. He also tells her he can't agree to a marriage between them as both of them will only end up unhappy. Upon hearing all this, Kosu becomes angry and immediately attacks him with a knife, cutting his face. She attempts more strikes, however she charges at him again with a dagger, intending to unalive him, but he suddenly activates Light Fairy, which repels her, throwing her out through the window. Meanwhile, as she falls off the building, Yudo suddenly remembers being the one who was always bugging her to join him in becoming a demon slayer, promising to protect her. He starts to feel terrible because he is an idiot who forgot about the promise between them. And while he sulks over this, Kwezu appears behind him, telling him how she has always held onto his promise. She then tells him that she will delay her plans and dance to his tune, promising not to attack his friends. However, she also tells him that he will soon discover that being with her is better, as she offers to always meet his magnum needs whenever he wants. She immediately becomes embarrassed that she is saying this and blames him for it. Himari, who has been listening to all her sus talks, appears and mocks her for being a naughty little baddie who wants Yudo's sausage. Himari tells her there's no way she is going to beat her in developing plot with Yudo, since she lives in the same house with him. Kwezu becomes pissed and tells Yudo she might have to take back her words, as it seems Himari desires an all-expense-paid trip to Nirvana. Himari suddenly reveals a creepy demon girl who immediately vomits all types of weapons from her mouth. Himari tells Kwezu to pick a weapon she wants to be isekai'd with, but Kwezu finds this gross. Meanwhile, a strange Ayakashi, who feeds on other Ayakashi, appears in the forest. Following this, Yudo's class holds an outdoor sketch day, and the teacher tells them to draw whatever they want. Teizo begins to simp over Himari, asking her to be his model so he can create a masterpiece of her work of art, but she turns him down, saying she doesn't show her body to bottom geese. Himari, Rinko, and Yudo leave him there, and the ugly chorus rep appears, so Teizo tells her he will settle for her since he couldn't get Himari. She gets angry and ditches him in a nearby pool. Later, as Yudo and the other two girls move around looking for a perfect scenery to represent in art, Himari becomes sus and suddenly pulls off her plot armor so he can draw her, shocking Yudo. Rinko becomes jealous and immediately starts pulling hers too, even though her chest is not any different from a boy's. Yudo becomes embarrassed and leaves, but as he walks away, he is suddenly pulled into a bush. Meanwhile, Kaburaji visits a wasteland filled with massacred Ayakashi bodies, and he reports the situation to Kwezu. He tells her it doesn't look like something a human did and asks if he should call Yudo, but she tells him to leave the matter to her. Himari and Rinko start searching for Yudo, but can't find him, and they wonder if an Ayakashi has taken him. As Rinko searches around, Sasa jumps on her and hops on her back for a piggy ride. Rinko then carries her to Himari and Shizuku. Himari suspects Sasa might be involved, and she asks her what she did to Yudo, and she replies that Aegea took him. Meanwhile, Aegea is dancing before Yudo. She gives him her melons to play with, and afterward, she hypnotizes him, knocking him out. She then starts to touch herself and then bends over to suck red juice from his neck. Himari and Shizuku interrupt her playtime, and Himari prepares to fight her for doing such to her master while Shizuku heals Yudo with her water. Aegea reveals that she is only doing this for her own protection, based on the recent Ayakashi massacre in the West. Yudo is shocked and wonders what is going on, and as he asks Aegea for more details, Kaburaji appears and offers to tell him about it. Later in the cafe, Kaburaji introduces himself and tells them he is from the Public Safety Division, an organization that deals with the Ayakashi. He then explains that many cases of the Ayakashi massacre have been confirmed, and in each of these cases, all of them have been devoured, shocking them. Yudo wonders who did such a crazy thing, and Kaburaji replies that the organization believes that a single Ayakashi was responsible for all those cases, shocking them again. Aegea adds that it is just as the rumors stated, and she reveals that she was after Yudo's blood because she thought she'd get a power-up from it before she gets attacked out of nowhere. Kaburaji then says he came to ask Yudo to cooperate with the Public Safety Division so he can assist them in defeating the cannibalistic demon. Yudo feels reluctant, but Kaburaji tries to psych him into agreeing by saying that his Ayakashi friends could be attacked anytime. However, Himari objects, saying she will not allow her master to be forced into doing his will. While they debate this, a strange girl suddenly appears above them, shocking them. Himari grabs Yudo and tries to leave, but another strange guy named Shuten blocks her. Himari gets angry and attempts to kick him, but the Shuten swiftly grabs her leg and throws her off. Sasa follows up with heat vision, but he absorbs the attack, surprising Shizuku. Aegea also launches an attack, but she gets her ass whipped too. Himari then charges at Tama, but she gets repelled by her force barrier. Shuten asks Tama who she wants to feed on first, and she briefly scans the room. She sets her eyes on Himari and immediately attacks her. She then tears off her clothes and literally begins to eat her melons. Kaburoji suspects this might be the rumored Ayakashi, which Shuten immediately confirms. As Tama continues to attack Himari, Koesu suddenly appears and interrupts them. She reveals that Tama is a nine-tailed fox, and Shizuku instantly realizes that Tama and Shuten are two of the three most powerful Ayakashi. Tama reveals that Himari doesn't taste too good for now, shocking her, and when Koesu prepares to fight, Shuten says that's enough for today. He then tells them that even though he has awakened with Tama's power, they are still mere fragments of their former selves and seek the purest, most powerful demonic energy. They disappear and Yuto immediately goes to meet Himari. Meanwhile, Himari remembers Tama telling her that she is suppressing her Yuki, so she won't taste any good if she eats her now. Following this, Kaburoji secretly meets Tama and Shuten to have a discussion. Meanwhile, Yuto and the girls hold a meeting to plan how to defeat the two powerful Ayakashi. But the meeting is only full of dimwits who have no better suggestions than the ones which allow them to develop plot with him. Himari later trains with a new katana she just got, but she isn't feeling it and says she has not liked any of the weapons she has used ever since her katana got damaged. Koesu arrives at that moment and tells her she retrieved her katana, which got destroyed in a fight with her that day, surprising her. However, it is badly damaged and has no hope of restoration. Sasa suddenly appears and the walking weapon inventory remembers that she can fix the sword, being a blacksmith Ayakashi who can fix any katana no matter how badly damaged it may be. Sasa immediately activates heat vision and fixes the sword instantly, making Himari excited. Meanwhile, in a different part of town, Yuto looks worried as he thinks about the current situation. When Rinko asks about it, he tells her that even though he knows he might not be able to reach every Ayakashi, he wonders if this can be solved without fighting. Rinko thinks the world will be a better place if there are more people like him. She then wonders why Tama and Shuten eat fellow Ayakashi, and Kaya reveals that they are using it to gain more power for themselves to regain their bodies, reminding Yuto of what Shuten said in their last encounter. However, Shizuku says this might not be their only goal, as Shuten bears a strong grudge against the humans who sealed him, and once he fully revives, he will surely come after humans for revenge. Afterward, Yuto meets everyone and tells them that his mind has not changed about the fact that humans and Ayakashi can coexist. However, the two Ayakashi isekaiing their fellow demons must be taken care of, and so because of this he has chosen to fight even though he might not able to do much as a demon slayer. Later that night, Himari, while in her room, thinks about fighting the two powerful Ayakashi, but she fears losing her mind and going berserk. Meanwhile, Koesu receives a call from Kaburoji, who asks about the development with Yuto, but she tells him not to worry about it and go play a little. After the call, Kaburoji reasons that if the Public Safety Division can't rely on the Demon Slayers, they may as well use the two Ayakashi with the same goal of isekaiing all Ayakashi. He meets them and reminds them of their agreement, which is that they will only attack the Ayakashi and not humans, to which Shuten agrees. Later into the night after dinner, Himari rises from their midst and goes inside, pretending to be going to sleep. However, she heads out secretly, intending to go and face Tama and Shuten alone. As she leaves, she suddenly sees Yuto before her, who rebukes her for thinking of sacrificing herself for him. He tells her she must always stay by his side and follow the path he chooses. They both get emotional and almost kiss, but Koesu interrupts them and tells Himari to quit being a man-stealer, because she is Yuto's future partner. The next day, while the girls try to train Yuto so he can unleash his residual power, Shuten suddenly emits demonic energy that spreads across a part of the city and surrounds it, separating the area from the other part of the city. The humans within the area start to disappear, surprising Yuto and others, and they realize that the area is currently separated from the real world. Tama suddenly appears, and on seeing her, Himari immediately charges at her without thinking, but Tama repels her with her force barrier. Koesu also launches an attack, but Tama breaks it easily. The others also follow with their attacks, but Tama resists them all. Meanwhile, Kaburoji is watching from afar, hoping that this will soon be over so he can quit his 9-to-5 job. However, Shuten considers him a fool for believing that he will abide by a useless promise not to attack humans when he finally revives, as he can't ever forget the humiliation and pain he felt when he was sealed by humans. Himari attacks Tama again, but she keeps throwing her off. Tama then lifts a bus with her power and crashes it on her, pinning her to the wall. She then approaches Himari and tells her she's not yet right for eating. She unleashes a massive energy that destroys everything around her. She spots Sasa and attacks her. She then throws Yudo off as he attempts to attack her, annoying Himari, who immediately charges at her and starts to lose her mind. Noticing this, Tama realizes that Yudo is her trigger, so she grabs him and threatens to isekai him, making Himari angrier and causing her to lose her mind even further. Himari starts to attack in this state but suddenly calms when Yudo cautions her. Tama and Shuten withdraw immediately, and Yudo and his colleagues run for their dear lives. Afterward, while the others research how they can defeat Tama and Shuten, Himari heads out on her own because she doesn't want Yudo to put his life in danger by fighting along with them. She soon reaches the bank of a river, and suddenly, Tama emerges from the river, shocking her. Shuten emits energy from his body that darkens the sky, and then he trolls Himari, asking her if she will go back to call her friends or settle this right away. She stupidly attacks again with the same technique she has been using and gets thrown off. She tries attacking again, but Tama knocks her to the ground with her magic. Himari thinks about Yudo for a moment and decides to do anything to protect him. She starts to drown in darkness and finally goes berserk. Himari loses it completely and engages in a violent battle with Tama. Yudo and the rest feel the impact of the fight and wonder what is going on. They soon realize that Himari has gone to fight the Ayakashi alone. The intense battle continues between the two monsters, and after a series of exchanges, Himari grows out white hair and tattoos, further transforming into a cat demon. They charge at each other again, and Tama bites her, sucking red juice from her body, but Himari isn't affected by this. Meanwhile, Tama grows 4 tails to show she's become more powerful. Yudo and the others arrive at the scene. On seeing her, Yudo shouts that he is coming to save her, but Kwesu stops him and tells him it might already be too late, considering her current form. Yudo is surprised and wonders how she turned like that. Shuten replies that she gave into the darkness within her to protect him, shocking him. The fight continues and soon, Tama grabs Himari with one of her tails and bites her on the neck to suck more juice, which immediately transforms into the 9-tailed fox's true form. She then restrains Himari and prepares to deal a final blow. But on seeing this, Yudo tells her where he is, encouraging her not to give up so she can come back to him alive. Himari suddenly gets stronger and frees herself from Tama's grip. Then she charges at her with massive strikes from her claws, defeating her instantly. Shuten is shocked and becomes worried that his revival might no longer be possible. Yudo quickly runs toward Himari to greet her, but is shocked when he realizes she doesn't recognize him anymore. She attacks all of them, and after beating them, she emits a tremendous demonic energy that affects the whole area. Seeing this, Shuten becomes excited that even if he can't eliminate humans with his own hands, Himari's power will be the end of all humans, which he finds equally satisfying. Kubareji appears and asks Shuten why he is not doing anything about the cat Ayakashi, who has gone berserk, but Shuten replies that he was never concerned about humans and then isekais him. However, Yudo remembers Shizuku once telling him about the family head that isekai'd an Ayakashi that had lost itself, so he grabs Himari's katana and declares that if she doesn't stop, he might have to isekai her too. Himari suddenly charges at him, and as she draws closer, Yudo prepares to slash her. However, he suddenly drops his sword and hugs her instead because he doesn't have the courage to isekai her. The light fairy gets activated, and a bright light shines upward, bringing Himari out of her darkness and returning her to her human form. Shuten becomes pissed and transforms into a monster. However, Yudo grabs the katana and imbues it with the light fairy magic, shocking everyone that he has finally awakened his powers. He gives Himari the imbued sword and fixes her clothes with light fairy. She then attacks Shuten, cutting off his arm in one try. However, Shuten's arm starts to regenerate, but Himari charges at him again and splits him into 2, isekai'ing him. Following this, they're excited and hope to return to their everyday lives, but Himari says that she cannot go with them as her duty is only to protect Yudo until he awakens his power, and now that he has, she has to go. Kwesu is excited to hear that the man-stealer is finally going, and she immediately grabs Yudo. Kwesu then requests that Yudo use the light fairy to fix her clothes so Himari can have her last sight of it, but the idiot finds it difficult to activate it. It happens that he only awakened temporarily because of his need to save someone dear to him. Afterward, they all return to normal lives, and Tama is now part of the fold. The end. If you have reached this far, Let's confuse the fake fans by commenting "Rip Yudo." Also, give this video a like, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell. See you on the next one.